The Edmonton Oilers are certainly desperate for goaltending help. Which veteran goalies could they be looking at around the NHL? We'll discuss the latest rumors on that situation. Plus, is Patrick Waugh potentially a candidate for the GM opening in Ottawa? Could he be a head coach replacement? Lots of speculation about what's up with Mr. Waugh here in the last 24 hours. Plus, we have lots of other updates around the NHL, including a big update from Sportico on NHL values, big news on the waiver wire, another fine in the NHL, and lots of injury updates as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. We have a lot to cover here today, including some very interesting rumors, which we'll get to in a few minutes' time. First up, let's start with news from the NHL waiver wire. Of course, yesterday was the somewhat surprising news on Edmonton Oilers goaltender Jack Campbell being placed on waivers, and to no surprise, we found out this afternoon that he indeed did clear. Of course, with $5 million per season and another 3 full seasons plus the current one left, not really a shocker that there weren't any takers based on his recent stats and how he's played in Edmonton during his 1+ season so far as an Oiler. So he's now been assigned to the minor leagues of AHL Bakersfield, and they've recalled Calvin Pickard, who has a decent amount of NHL experience. Mind you, it's been sporadic in the last number of years. It was 2017 when he was last a regular NHL goaltender. Then he's been an up-and-down goalie really ever since, but at least he does have some experience, more so than Olivier Rodrigue, who's the other call-up option right now. So we'll see. Obviously, the Oilers don't necessarily know that Pickard's going to come in and be the savior here, so Ken Holland's working the phones quite a bit, and we'll get into the latest rumors on that a little bit later. Yesterday, the Calgary Flames also had forward Dryden Hunt on waivers as well. He, in fact, also has cleared, so he's now also been reassigned to their minor league team with the Wranglers. We also got another new waiver situation today, which shouldn't be a surprise, as we talked about the fact yesterday that he was signing in Europe. But Andreas Johnsson, former Toronto Maple Leaf, former Devil, currently in the Penguins system, in their minor league system. Of course, Kyle Dewar very familiar with Johnsson from their time in Toronto together. At one point, Johnsson seemed to be a pretty promising member of the Leafs' future. And really, after a couple of good years, he ended up getting moved out, which I think is fair to say mainly due to cap constraints, but just never really found his game after that. After leaving Toronto. So, in fact, he's going back to Europe. And we talked yesterday how he's signing a 3-year deal to play, I believe it was in Sweden. So, to make that happen, the Penguins had to place him on waivers which is unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. So, they mutually agreed to terminate that contract. So, no big surprise there. We got a fine in the NHL for a situation last night. Ross Colton of the Avalanche was fined the maximum amount of $5,000 for cross-checking against Devils forward Timo Meier. He also had laid right in that same sequence what a lot of people are calling a dirty hit on Devils defenseman Luke Hughes. Depending on who you ask, it's dirty or not dirty. The puck was rung around the boards and was kind of coming right in front of him. Luke Hughes, you can make an argument, I think, put himself in a little bit of a dangerous spot, but Colton did hit him a little bit out from the boards and he nailed him hard. Luke Hughes did leave the game, but was able to come back and return playing, so it looks like he's going to be okay. So this fine is for the cross-checking against Timo Meier that happened a little bit later in that sequence, but nothing for the actual hit on Hughes, in case you're wondering. The San Jose Sharks won a game, and that shouldn't be news, but when you're starting as poorly and historically bad as they have, it's become news. They picked up a 2-1 victory over the Philadelphia Flyers last night. Of course, their next game will be tomorrow evening against the Edmonton Oilers, who need a win so desperately. The last thing they need to see is the Sharks go on a bit of a streak here, or kind of turn things around just in time for them to arrive at the Shark Tank. So obviously, the Sharks had a meeting with GM Mike Greer the day before. He talked about how a lot of things he was seeing were unacceptable, and they really buckled down a lot, especially on the defensive side of the puck. Blackwood was really good again, and they actually pulled off a victory over the Philadelphia Flyers. So 2-1, first win of the season, which is a little late, but hey, better late than never is what they say. The Sharks definitely heading for a lottery. No big surprise there. The Pittsburgh Penguins also lost their starting goaltender last night. They've already been without Alex Nedeljkovic, who's on long-term injury reserve, and now starting goalie Tristan Jarry is out of action for. We don't know exactly what we're dealing with yet, but he did leave the game last night. It looked like a serious situation, and I'm going to say probably that he's going to be out for a while. Now, of course, they were playing in Anaheim, and Adam Henrique had come across the crease. Of course, Jarry, in the goalie positions, hunched over, trying to make a save. Henrique comes through, and I think it was about his hip, made contact with Jarry's head. And you could tell he was visibly impacted immediately, went straight off the ice, and did not come back. Magnus Hellberg is the de facto starter for the time being until we get further updates on Jarry. We don't know the exact situation he's dealing with, but it did not look good, and we'll have to wait and see and monitor that situation. Penguins might be, kind of looking for goalies like the Oilers by default here too, if Jarry's going to be out for a longer period of time. We also saw a situation in Calgary where former All-Star Jonathan Huberdeau was benched for the entire third period. We know he's been having a tough time the entire duration of his stay in Calgary, and it's getting worse instead of better, even though, of course, we thought with Daryl Sutter moving on, new coach, some new ways of doing things, maybe some different line mates, that Huberdeau could get things going and find himself like he was, an 80 to 90, 100-point player for a chunk of the time that he was in Florida. Like, it's not like he forgot to play hockey. What's going on with Jonathan Huberdeau? And it's just gone from bad to worse. So ultimately, head coach Ryan Huska said he just wasn't, playing his game, and he needed to play the guys that were going to get the win. They did pull off the victory, which is the main thing. So it shows the coach had a right hunch here. Huberdeau did speak to the media today saying that it was humbling and tough to deal with, but he needs to be better. And we're curious to see. I mean, at this rate, you might make an argument that he needs to get out of Calgary because he just hasn't looked right the entire time. But where's he going to go? How are they going to pull off a trade? It's not going to be easy. I don't know what's going on with Huberdeau, but hopefully they can get things figured out. The Capitals today placed Nicholas Backstrom on long-term injury reserve. They needed the cap space to make a recall. Evgeny Kuznetsov has been ill, likely going to miss another game, so they recalled Michael Scarbosa. So they'll now have that luxury of the Backstrom contract being an LTIR to make other moves here to be more flexible. Of course, we also saw a big situation last night with Matt Tomkins, the Tampa Bay goalie, picked up his first NHL victory at age 29. Of course, this is a prime example of perseverance, dedication, sticking with it. Tomkins was drafted a long, long time ago. It's been like over a decade. Gets his first win. It's been over 4,100 days since he was drafted, and at age 29 would be 11 years ago when he was drafted, and he finally gets that first victory. Of course, he and Jonas Johansson have been holding down the fort here with the Lightning due to the injury to Andrei Vasilevsky. I would think more than likely that Tomkins will be the goaltender that gets demoted, or if they can't carry three, which is going to be tough to do for them once Vasilevsky returns. Johansson's definitely been the better of the two, but a nice story in Tomkins nonetheless to get his opportunity and make the most of it to get that first win. We also saw the Coyotes demote forward Zach Stanford to the American Hockey League. Of course, back in 2019, he was on a regular shift with the St. Louis Blues winning the Stanley Cup. Now he finds himself in the minors. The Lightning, of course, also, besides the Tompkins situation, they also lost Connor Sherry to injury. He might be out for a little bit, and they've recalled Waltteri Muriel in his place. Bruins forward Morgan Geekie, also going to be out for a little while. He's got an upper body injury, and they're listing him as week to week. Now, we also got a very interesting update and news from Sportico. Covers more of the business side of sports. The latest NHL team evaluations from the, obviously, like what they're worth money-wise. And we saw a major increase year over year, 31% increase in NHL franchise values in a year's time. That's crazy. Obviously, the Ottawa Senators sale going close to $1 billion certainly had a big impact on that. Not too long before them. The year before, we saw the Penguins sale to the Fenway Group. That's also obviously impacted things too. But it's fair to say that whenever the expansion word comes up again, which we know it will, that you're definitely not seeing an expansion fee under $1 billion. There's just no way that's going to happen now. And to be completely honest, depending on the timing and when the expansion actually maybe happens, if it's, if let's say they're still a couple of years away, because we don't know. I mean, obviously, when they announce that they're interested, they'll go through an evaluation period. It's easily going to be a year, if not two, maybe three, who knows. But like, if it's a couple more years away, it wouldn't be shocking to see that expansion fee go to 1.5 or even closer to $2 billion. Maybe closer to 2 than 1. It's hard to say. But we now have 22 out of the 32 NHL teams with a franchise valuation of $1 billion plus. 27 of the 32 are at least $950. So that's another 5 teams that are within $50 million of being valued at $1 million. So the Sens, like I said, the most recent team to sell, sold for $950, which sounds like a lot, and it is, but that's the 27th highest valuation across NHL franchises, which is absolutely bonkers when you think about it. The highest one was the Toronto Maple Leafs at $2.65 billion. The Rangers were next at $2.45 billion. The Habs at $2.27 billion. The Blackhawks, $1.84 billion. The Bruins at 1.78. The LA Kings are up to number 6 now at 1.72 billion. The Flyers are at number 7 at 1.7 billion. The Oilers are the 8th highest at 1.59 billion. Number 9 is the Washington Capitals at 1.42 billion. And another original 6 team, the Red Wings, round out the top 10 with $1.37 billion. The last place team for valuation, not a shocker, is the Arizona Coyotes, $675 million. It won't be long, though, before all these teams are at $1 billion plus. If you think about it, if the Coyotes get their new arena situated and get it figured out, once they have a permanent home, that franchise value is going to go up a fair bit as well. And like I said, it won't be long before they're all $1 billion plus. And when we see expansion franchises again, they're easily going to be over $1 billion, probably at least 1.5. If you think about, look at like the teams in Vegas and Seattle and how they've grown, look at what they've paid, but within 5 to 10 years, what the value's gone to, they can easily sell a higher fee. So it's definitely going to happen. It's just a matter of time. One other news and note around the league before we get into the rumor section. Kings goalie Cam Talbot as well as one more game away from earning himself $1 million bonus. Of course, he signed a 1-year deal with some bonus structure in between because he's eligible for that based on his age. Last year, he was injured a lot in Ottawa, so they gave him a $1 million bonus for 10 games. And that's likely going to end up counting as an overage for next year because they're tight on cap space. So depending on the cap situation, it can either count towards the current season or it can be tacked onto the next year. So the Kings are going to be, dealing with that as another cap issue down the road here in the not too distant future. Now, onto the rumor section of the video, we have 2 big ones to look at. One is Patrick Roy and the Ottawa Senators talking. There's a big rumor that got started. It was on the Montreal-Tampa broadcast on the French broadcast for that hockey game a couple nights ago, where they were talking about Patrick Roy being spotted in a Canada restaurant and speculation about is he in town to meet with the Senators. Now, there's been some people so far that have been able to debunk this and say that he wasn't there. But regardless if he was there or he wasn't there, is he a candidate of interest for them? They do have an opening for the GM role. At this point, I've said it myself, and I think I've heard it from enough sources. DJ Smith is not at a point of risking being fired. Now, if they lose the next 5 games, yeah, okay, all bets are off. But I don't think they would go to the point of bringing in anybody, especially a higher profile person like Waugh, who would be easily recognizable in any public setting, and to interview for a job that's not even vacant yet. I don't think they would do that to DJ, for one. I think if Staios and Landlower wanted to speak to him about that, they would go to him and do it in a more private setting. So there is that. But, you got to remember, there is a GM opening. And Patrick Roy has been a GM and a coach at the junior level. From what we've heard before, he's very much just as interested in being a GM in the NHL as he is a coach. So hard to say if he were interested in them. Obviously he's not from too far away. We know that there was some speculation before about another group that was buying the franchise, not Landlower's group, but one of the other ones that wanted to bring in Waugh. We speculated last week, if he would be a candidate of interest for either spot. Now, like I said, I've seen enough people say Waugh was not in Canada, so we'll see. Either way, it's interesting to hear his name come up. At this rate, though, I do wonder who some GM candidates could be. I know we've talked about some names that have been brought up in, NHL insiders and different media. Definitely lots of interesting names out there, but he is somebody who's not employed by an NHL team, so they'd have more flexibility to hire. I can see there being interest. I don't know that he'll end up being a guy, but this has been a big hoopla all over social media. Patrick was in town to talk to the Sens, and it turns out, based on what we can verify, I can't even say with certainty that he was there. Some people say he wasn't there. Regardless if he was or wasn't, I don't think that there's any way they would do that to DJ Smith. They would do it in a private setting, or if he did go to Ottawa to meet with them, that they would have done a lot better job at keeping things hush-hush, and he wouldn't be out on his own having lunch like that in a public space to get everybody all riled up. So at the end of the day, I don't think it matters if it's true or not. I don't see it really being something that would be impacting the coach. And if they want to talk to him about being the potential GM, and I can see that maybe being true, can't say for sure, that I think they would do that in a more private setting. And I don't really know that there's anything to the Patrick Wall rumors, but certainly interesting to think about nonetheless. Now in Edmonton, we've got lots to talk about goaltending. Campbell's cleared. He's been demoted. Pickett's coming up. I suspect he's probably going to start against the Sharks. What happens if they lose against the Sharks? That's another chaotic thing to think about. But another thing is that goaltending longer term. Pickard likely isn't the solution long term. So Ken Holland is definitely working the phones. We've got a lot of NHL insider information between Sarah Valley, Elliot Friedman, Mark Spector of Sportsnet, all talking about this in different interviews I saw today. The two names that keep coming up the most is Jordan Binnington and Jake Allen. Now, Jake Allen's been mentioned by a variety of places. We talked about him yesterday in Montreal, how it could be a good fit, good stabilizer. They're not going to give up on Stuart Skinner, somebody who was, in the Calder race last year. He's still young, had a good year. He's having a sophomore slump, sure. Struggled at the end of last year, but I think he doesn't make a ton of money. He's young. They're not giving up on him. They need somebody to come in and really stabilize the position, and maybe with Skinner having a smaller role, it'll go better. Allen could be that guy. Now, could Jordan Binnington be that guy? Now, he's also making $5 million like Campbell. The Blues, from what I've heard in the past year, have been open to moving him. Certainly, I think they're open to kind of hand over the reins probably to one of their younger goalies like Joel Hofer. The team is in a different spot here. I think they're open to kind of retooling a little bit. And really, ever since Binnington and the Blues won the Stanley Cup, he's kind of regressed, though. I'd be a little nervous if I'm Edmonton getting Jordan Binnington. Yes, he won the Stanley Cup. He performed a miracle once before, but it's been a long time since he's done that. That was 2019. It's 2023 now. Every season, I'm not saying he's a terrible goalie, and in theory, he'd be probably an upgrade on what they have now, but yeah, I don't know. I just think it's risky. I mean, Jake Allen to me it's funny how we're looking at Jake Allen and Jordan Binnington, the duo who won the cup together in St. Louis. Binnington obviously played more of the games, but it's just kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, I don't know. Personally, I think Jake is more of the stabilizer, a little older, making less money, not as much, term-wise, there's not a lot. There's only this year and next. And there's probably other options too. I've heard Carter Hart's name out there. But it's really tricky to say what they're doing. But Ken Holland is 100% working the phones. I think if they can move Campbell, they will. If the prices are too high, they'll figure out a way to make the cap work to move other pieces out and deal with that later. But yeah, if they can find a taker for Campbell, like there was some people joking around saying they should trade him to the Sharks. Because clearly, they don't care too much about winning right now. Anyways, but of course, it'd be funny if they traded him to the Sharks and then he starts against his old team tomorrow and shuts them down or something. That would just be karma in a nutshell, but that's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, what's Holland going to do? He's looking at his options. Binnington and Allen are the guys that are getting the most attention. I think Carter Hart is a couple things. They have not cleared the 2018 World Junior scandal. So there's that hanging over him. We don't know that he's guilty or innocent. We don't have any reason to say he's guilty. But until that team is cleared, I don't know that anybody on that team is going to get moved. That's just a personal thought. I could be wrong on that. We'll see. The price tag's going to be higher. He's younger. Long term would have more value to them. He's from the area. Lots to like about Carter Hart. I just don't know that they could pull it off. Whereas Binnington or Allen, I think, make more sense, at least from a lower cost acquisition and more of a short-term solution. But Hart would be the better long-term solution. So I don't know. It's going to be tough to do. They're going to have to move some pieces out. They don't have a lot of cap space, but they're going to get creative here and pay a high price if they have to. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.